From what I can observe, the situation is such that here in Southeast Asia, at least, the wildlife population has reached a point of crisis. Actually, for many species of wildlife, it's already too late. But for the vast majority of the remaining animals and birds, it's like reaching a tipping point. Now, this may sound depressing, this may sound certainly pessimistic, but unfortunately, from what I've observed, it's reality. Where we think about Vietnam or Cambodia or Laos, it's a similar situation. There's only a handful of vigorously protected areas where the situation is such that any wildlife bigger than rats seem to have any future left at all. If we think about the forest habitat, the tropical forests in Southeast Asia have lost in just the last 5 years 75 million hectares. Now that's astronomical. And if you compare it to Cambodia, it's equivalent to 4 countries the size of Cambodia. If we think about the wildlife here in Cambodia, in the last 25 years since I came to work in Cambodia, personal estimation is that the wildlife biomass, or you say the volume, has decreased by at least 90%. Just an example of how rapidly the wildlife is disappearing. Up till 2015, I could observe near my house around over 100 hornbills coming to eat the figs in the fig trees during fruit season. But in the last couple years, we're lucky to see 10, and sometimes only 4 or 5 that come to eat the fruit. This rapid decline in the hornbill and other fruit-eating bird population actually in our area is a direct result of poisoning. Now this is where the hunters, they climb up in the trees and they spray termite poison on the figs, and thereby they kill hundreds of birds at once. And my question is this: do we, as urban dwellers especially, really understand what is happening out there in the forest and to our environment in our own country? And secondly, do we realize the negative impact this is going to have on us and our children's futures once it's all gone, economically, physically, even socially? These are just a few of the issues I'd like to discuss with you this afternoon. You know, the first time I laid eyes on tropical Asia's, Southeast Asia's natural wonders was around 30 years ago. I was working in the refugee camps in Thailand at the time, and during my free time, I would go travel around the country, especially along the borders, and see the jungle and other forest things. I remember swimming in the Mekong River. I looked east into Laos, and it was just mountain range after mountain range of seemingly untouched forest. It was beautiful. And I also remember that the countries of Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia, they all seemed to me like just vast jungles, just teeming with wildlife. I remember flying from Bangkok to Seattle, Washington, 1989. I looked down as I went across the border of Thailand and Cambodia, and at the jungle, it was just beautiful and untouched, especially compared to Thailand. I remember looking at the rivers. They were so clear and nice, they looked black. But just a few years later, 1993, I again flew over the same forest during UNTAC election. I was actually horrified to see all these new roads coming in from Thailand into Posat and Gokong. The forest actually didn't look that bad still, but the rivers had turned from black to blood red from all the silt. So I knew that something was happening down there underneath that canopy. I'd already been up to Ratnagiri. I'd been to Kirirom a few times at that time. I'd seen logging happening there, so now I realized it was happening all over the country. I really wished I could do something, you know, to get involved in conservation, but because of the security and the situation, all I could do was just watch, take a few pictures before it was all gone. Well, for the next 20 years, I worked primarily in rural development. So for an NGO, and I worked primarily in the rural villages, helping people to solve their water and sanitation issues. Excuse me. So I always chose project sites that were way out in the far rural areas, partly because I really felt like I could make the most contribution to helping poor people, really poor people, solve their day-to-day problems, but also I just wanted to be close to nature and be able to see it. However, over time, I developed a sense of frustration, and it was because I had to watch natural area after natural area being destroyed. So I developed this intense desire to do something about it. Well, finally, I decided if I was ever going to do something, it better be now. So I left my job working for the NGO. I approached the relevant government ministries, and I suggested partnering with them, as well as a local community in northern Cambodia, where we'd been living for like 10 years. I suggested protecting a block of forest land and the wildlife in the name of ecotourism. Surprisingly, they agreed readily. So for the last 6 years, my family and I have been living out here in the forest, working to protect the wildlife and the forest habitat. It's been a lot of fun, but it hasn't been easy. Our journey can best be described as 3 steps forward, 2 steps backwards, sometimes 4 steps backwards. There have been actual successes, especially we think the Ministry of Environment, they threw their support behind us and designated a 42,000 hectare wildlife sanctuary around our area. Also, besides the ministry giving us support, various celebrities and Khmers and city people from all walks of life have given us generous donations financially and especially moral support. So we have not been forgotten by any means. But while the logging actually has slowed down, at least in our core conservation area, wildlife poaching and hunting has not slowed down. It's only gotten worse. We think in the last 4 years, we have lost 6 key species of wildlife in our area, including clouded leopards, bears. You can see the photo. All those have gone missing since 2015. Besides that, there's been a massive increase in homemade guns. So this is where the villagers, they make homemade guns out of barrels they bring from Laos, and they use black powder, and it can kill almost anything. And the wildlife, especially the primates, the population has decreased from hundreds in our area down to almost nothing. So it's like we're in a constant battle that we're not even sure we can win. All we know is that if we stop fighting even for a minute, we'll for sure lose. I've observed actually that pretty much every forested area is either a battlefield or a killing field. What I mean is there's just no place that the wildlife is safe unless the local people are making a massive effort to stave off the people that are making a bad impact on the environment. Each year you can see the poachers here. I'm holding a camera in one hand and I'm helping 6 of my rangers to try and tackle this banting poacher with an AK-47. So each year we notice the poachers get more and more aggressive and prone to threaten us when we confront them. It's just so stressful that sometimes we want to give up. And unfortunately, in some areas, that's exactly what happens all too often. Well, so what is the solution then? You know, for surely, I'm not going to stand up here and talk like this on and on if I didn't think there was a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, right? So frankly, I think there's a few things that do need to happen first to give nature a chance and to give us hope for the future. First of all, urban people, they need to realize just what is happening to the environment in their own country and what its impact is going to be on them. I really think that what people cannot see, what they've never heard of, they're not going to care too much about. And if they don't know what it is they're losing, they're never going to care. They're not going to worry about it. If they don't know what it is, they can have no sense of loss when they've lost it. I think that when urban people start to realize just what is happening to the environment in their own backyard, so to speak, and what this negative impact is going to be on them and their children's future, once it's all gone, then they can be motivated to positive action. Secondly, we need the people who are exploiting the natural resources to become aware of what they are doing to their future, to their children's future. Rural people need to realize that we need forest to keep the air clean, if we want clean air, if we want clean water. People need to realize that even if they cut down all the forest in the world so they can plant soybeans or cassava or other cash crops, it's actually not going to help them or their children to prosper in the long run. If the global temperature becomes so hot that there's repeated crop failure. You know, in our area, the honey hunters that get wild honey have begun to poison the honeybees. Now, people need to realize that if they're going to poison all the honeybees to get the honey, or the farmers spray all the other pollinating insects to death, this is going to negatively affect not just their livelihood, but the livelihood of all the farmers in the world that rely on the $500 billion agriculture industry, which of course feeds the rest of the world. So basically, rural people especially need to realize just how important all biodiversity is for the health of our planet and for all of our own survival. Thirdly, there's got to be adequate, consistent, fair law enforcement. Now, I'm of the opinion, my personal opinion, that all the awareness raising in the world will actually not deter poachers and loggers that are career poachers and loggers. And here's why: because they can make so much more money poaching and logging than they can do from any other alternative livelihood, such as agriculture. Plus, there's a second mentality among poachers and loggers that if I'm a poacher and I stop poaching for the benefit of the planet and for everybody, the world, well, at the end of the day, I'm just going to be poor. The people that keep exploiting it are going to get rich, and everything's going to be gone anyway. So it's a very pessimistic outlook. The only way to answer this is to have a fairly applied, consistent, and adequate law enforcement. Well, how then can common citizens get involved? Here are a few ideas we've got if you fit the category urban person. First of all, take an interest in and begin to love nature. Now, you might be like my family. They like water parks and shopping malls more than going out in the jungle. But actually, we need to go out in that jungle and see what's there. I think city people need to go out there and see the animals that used to live there still and what used to live there, and realize that this is their future, also going down the drain, as it were, not just the local people who are destroying it. Secondly, we need to use social media. Now, social media, we need to use it properly. My family is good at using it, not so good. And, you know, the poachers and the loggers, they also use social media to sell animals, wildlife online. You can go to YouTube and you can watch a career professional poacher teach you how to set traps for almost any kind of wildlife. Well, we need to use social media to share photos and stories about natural areas that are worth protecting, that need protecting, and thereby mobilize people to help us protect it. I really believe that there's no greater role than the role of social media to raise awareness about what's happening to the environment and to mobilize people to do something about it. Thirdly is the potential for ecotourism. Now, ecotourism is expanding rapidly, and this is actually one of the few ways that local rural people can earn a living from forest and wildlife without actually destroying it. So we need to go find those nice, beautiful areas and mobilize people to help us protect them. There's actually still many, many beautiful places here in Cambodia that have not been irreversibly damaged. So city folks need to go find those areas and mobilize, find ways to protect it. Normally this means, first of all, talking to government that manages the area, the ministry. If it's the Ministry of Environment, they may very well give you permission to work there, and they'll be happy to cooperate with you to support conservation initiatives. Secondly, you need to get to know the rural people that live out there and get them on board and get them involved. They need to see by our example that actually nature most people value nature just the way it is, for its pure beauty and for the awe that it inspires. So we need to find local people, especially a champion of nature appointment that we can work with, get them involved in protecting the environment, support them in finding initiatives and different sources of livelihood. And together, you can work with them to turn a potential ecological disaster into a well-known ecotourism destination, and at the same time, make a contribution toward the environment. Well, in conclusion, I just want to say that yes, conservation does at times seem like a battle that cannot be won, but I seriously believe that if enough people take an interest in solving this problem, then the future need not look nearly so bleak. You know, me and my family would not have actually survived until now, living out in the jungle for the last 6 years, if it had not been for a key group of dedicated city people that had basically took us under their wing and gave us badly needed financial support and also moral support. Plus, they helped us connect with the right government ministry people that had the power of decision. This same scenario needs to be repeated in dozens of other places around Cambodia. I seriously believe that there are millions of stressed out, or at least soon to be stressed out, city people that need a quiet, natural place to escape to. We need to have many more of these small ecotourism destinations to cater to this current need as well as the future need. So I challenge you to find a natural place and get involved. Push the cause and teach others that nature can be preserved. And remember this, money is not everything. In fact, money is nothing if we cannot live on a healthy planet. And ultimately, it is what each one of us does that will make the final difference. Thank you very much.